Welcome, writers, readers, and friends to the Authors Talking Bookish podcast. I'm Donna Norman Carbone, author of All That Is Sacred.
And I'm Hope Gibbs, author of Where the Grass Grows Blue.
We're two debut writers traditionally published by a small publishing house, bringing to you all the experiences that we as authors learn the hard way, so you don't have to.
We'll give you insights from the inception of a book idea to publication and beyond. And along the way, we'll share our love of books from the writer's perspective.
Hello, friends. Welcome back. It's been a long time. This is episode 38, and today we're talking about our best book recommendations from 2024 and what we're looking most forward to in 2025. I'm Donna Carbone, and I am joined by Hope Gibbs. Hello, Hope.
Hey, Donna, and Happy New Year. It has been a long time since we have done one of these podcasts.
Yes, it has. It has. Our month-long hiatus turned into a little bit longer because you and I had a tough January.
Yes, I got the flu for the first time in my life. I highly suggest a flu shot. I did not get one this year. I kind of got behind with the holidays and whatnot, and so we had to cancel because of me. And then, unfortunately, Donna, we had to cancel later because you got sick.
Yeah. I've been sick twice now. I've been out of work for almost 2 weeks this whole month.
Yeah.
First, I had the flu as well the week before you did. And then you got the flu. And then I got sick again this past week. So
Yeah.
it's been a long, long month for many reasons.
Yes, it has. And I felt like January lasted 2 months, and
Yeah.
I was at home alone for most of it. My husband was out of town, so I unfortunately didn't feel like reading. All I could do was just have the TV on, and I have to say I went through a bunch of series in the past couple of weeks. So I'm kind of running out of things to watch. So I'm going to
Yeah.
have to start reading again.
Yeah. Speaking of reading, what are you reading right now?
So I just finished this book, and it's called First Lie Wins. And I read this because of my daughter. We were going out of the country and we needed a book. And so it's so exciting to see her excited about reading. And we're going to talk about that with one of my best books of 2024, is specifically because of my daughter. In this book, there were so many twists and turns, and it was a quick read. It's a very quick read. I have recommended it to a friend of mine who was on vacation in Mexico, and she read it in one day, which I kind of almost did as well. So it's an easy read, a thriller, a mystery. It was also a Reese Witherspoon pick as well. So what about you, Donna? What are you reading?
I am reading The Let Them Theory by Mel Robbins. I came across Mel Robbins probably a couple of years ago just on Instagram. And I honestly feel like this lady is my own personal therapist.
Oh.
She just gives the best just life advice, little tweaks that you can make just to make your day easier, to get you more motivated. And so I went out and bought this book. I feel like it's all the rage. I feel like everybody's reading it right now. But if you're not, I highly recommend it, especially in the political climate that we're in right now. I think it has some good tools to help you get by.
Well, I will definitely check that out. And I love how, you and I, we always kind of think alike, but we even read like the same colors. Both of us read a book that the primary book cover was green for this week. So I know. So let's talk about why we're here. We're going to discuss our favorite books of 2024 and also some books that we're looking forward to this year in 2025. So let's just start right off the bat. Donna, why don't you start with one of your picks?
Okay. So, up on the screen is Mad Honey, an echo of old books. And I absolutely adored both of these books. Mad Honey is in the voice of two women, Olivia and Lily. Lily is dead, and Olivia's son has been pinned for the murder of her. It's a really interesting book about secrets that we keep, and it has a huge surprise about 2/3 of the way into the novel, something I personally did not see coming. I love Jodi Piccoult, and she she joined together with Jennifer Finney Boylan, who I have not read before, and they co-wrote this book. I think it's a profoundly important story, especially for today. And I highly recommend it. The other book, The Echo of Old Books, is my first Barbara Davis book, but it certainly will not be my last. It's about rare book dealer Ashlyn Greer's affinity for books. And basically, the premise is that she has this old bookstore that she restores old books. And when she touches the books, she feels the emotions of the people who read the books that came before her. And so it kind of sets her on this journey to find out the story of this couple that read this book. And it's fascinating. I love the premise. It's a little magical. I love Barbara Davis's writing. I think I tore through this book in a day or two at the most.
Yeah.
And I'm really looking forward to reading more Barbara Davis books.
I have never read Barbara Davis, and I love the title of that book. The cover immediately catches my eye. I think that's one of the better covers I've seen this year. And also Jodi Picoult, though, I used to read her books, every time a book came out. I have not read her in a few years, but her book, 19 Minutes, was one of the first books I ever read from her. And I love how she really puts the reader, you empathize with the characters, whether the character is a bad character or, someone who's conflicted. I absolutely love her style. And I have that book on my list to read this year.
Yeah. Yeah. She always tackles some really tough issues too, which I think are interesting and important and relevant and connectable. She's such a good writer. And
Yeah.
I follow her on TikTok. She's a hoot too. She has a great sense of humor.
Really?
Yeah,
I
she
kind of
does.
gave up on TikTok a while ago, and I took it off my phone and all of that. But I'm interested now to figure out what she does on
Yeah,
TikTok.
follow
So
her on Instagram. She's on
yeah.
Instagram too.
And she also has a lot of book adaptations that have been made into movies. As I was sick, as we
Yeah.
talked about, almost for 2 weeks, My Sister's Keeper, that was
Yeah.
also one of the first books I ever read of hers. And you know what? I knew the story. I've seen the movie several times, but I couldn't turn away. I will always watch that movie. So
Yeah.
I love Jodi Picoult, and I definitely need to look at that one for this year.
Yeah, I think that was her breakout book.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that was my first book that I read of hers as well. So what about you, Hope? What are some books that are on your list from last year?
Okay, so the first two I chose, they're very opposite books. The first one is It's Hard for Me to Live with Me, and this is from Rex Chapman. So, for those who may not have ever heard of Rex Chapman, he was the king of Kentucky basketball back when I was growing up, so much so that I even mention him in my book. Because he was this bigger than life University of Kentucky basketball player. He went on to the NBA, was very successful in the NBA, but he had multiple injuries and he got addicted to painkillers. And it totally it wrecked this man's life. But it's a story of redemption because Rex, he conquered his demons. It took him a long time. And to hear how he went from a top NBA player, a college superstar, king of the bluegrass, to basically to nothing, and how he had to really overcome his demons and how he reconnected with his family. It is, you don't have to be a basketball fan to appreciate what he went through. And then he built this huge following over on Twitter before it became X. And now he's over on Blue Sky, and I still follow him. And he really has changed and turned his life around. But he also gives back to the community. He wants to share his story, and people can be so cruel. I mean, I remember seeing some of the nastiest comments on Twitter, which is now X, which I am off of now as well. But he always handled it with grace, and he was like, look, I'm showing you all the warts and everything. So this book really just opened my eyes, and I highly recommend it for anyone. And I have children too, and I recommended they read this book as well because he didn't intend to go down the road of addiction. And he
Right.
was prescribed all of these medications. And,
Yeah.
his biggest, I think his where he hit rock bottom was he got caught stealing in an Apple store. So can you
Mm.
imagine an MBA man who has made tens of millions of dollars is getting
Mm.
caught stealing at an Apple store? So that was my first one. And then the second one is The Housemaid by Freida McFadden. And was this the best book I read of the year? No, but it was enjoyable. It had a
Mm.
twist that I did not see coming. The reason I selected this is because my daughter was so excited about this book and this author. So she had left this book at home. And so I started reading it. And then there was a sequel and another one. So I read it because it gave me something to talk about with my daughter. And it's great. It's a great story. Was I entertained? Absolutely.
Mm.
And the reason I chose it was because it connected my 21-year-old daughter who used to not really love reading. And
Yeah.
now she has become the biggest fan. And this book is being actually developed into a movie that's going to come out later this year.
Cool. I actually remember one of our very first podcasts. I don't remember what we were talking about, but you were talking about your daughter not being a reader.
Mhm.
And how shocking that is to you because you're a writer of novels. So how awesome is that I think your journey kind of, gave her her own journey.
Yeah. It
Yeah.
but here's the thing. I sympathized with her in high school because
Yeah.
I was the daughter of an English teacher, and
Mhm.
as you are an English teacher, and I didn't necessarily always love to read because I was told what to read. And
Yeah.
now some of those books I reread now and I appreciate it in a completely different light now that I'm an adult. But I understood that after I was, like when I was in college and I had a little bit more free time, and after college, I started finding my genres, books that spoke to me. And so
Yeah.
I love it. She calls me all the time about her Goodreads page, and it means the world to me. Now, my 4 sons, are they readers? No, unfortunately not.
Mm.
But I will take it that my daughter has found the love of reading.
Yeah, that's pretty special.
So let's talk about some more books that you read this year that
Okay.
you loved.
So I have 2 books. One is I'll start with James by Percival Everett. That's one of the first books that I read when it came out because I teach the adventures of Huck Finn. And so I'm always looking for new inroads to, teach these classics like you were just talking about that seem so dated and archaic to kids today. And so I thought, this book just came out. I'm going to assign it for summer reading. And so my students read it. I read it as well. And what a refreshing take it is on the adventures of Huck Finn. It is Percival Everett takes the voice of Jim, who is the slave that runs away with Huck. Um, and the entire book is in his voice. And it's a really interesting take on it. There is kind of a subplot or a theme on language. And it's really interesting because Jim is far more intelligent in this book than you would imagine him to be in the adventures of Huck Finn. But he feels like he has to hide his intelligence to survive.
Yeah.
And so it's really interesting. Percival Everett does 3 different parts. So he breaks the story into 3 different parts. The last part is entirely new, nothing like nothing that even came from Huck Finn. So it's kind of an extension of the book. And that was my favorite part because I really feel like Jim's character came to life there and there was redemption for him. So it's gotten a lot of accolades. He's won a lot of awards and I would highly recommend it.
Yeah, I have that one on my list this year as well because I think that was probably one of the highest rated books
Yeah.
universally of 2024.
Yeah.
Okay, so tell me about the next book.
So the next book is called The Little Liar. If you've been following along, I'm a huge Mitch Albom fan. I actually feel like I try to aspire to write the kinds of novels that he writes that are filled with heart and, just deep thinking and ideas and Mitch Albom is just somebody who, no matter what book that I read of his, I am immediately engrossed. So this one is about the Holocaust, but it's the story of a Greek family who is separated by the Holocaust. It takes place, I think, entirely in Greece. And it's about a young boy who is just a truth teller. He just can't tell a lie for anything until he gets separated from his family. And then all he does is lie, and he becomes a pathological liar. And so the really interesting thing about this book is the narrative. The narrator is truth, the idea of truth. And it's really interesting the way that it plays into this story of this young boy and his family and a friend of his during the Holocaust. I would highly recommend it. It's one of my favorite Mitch Albom books. I think one of my all-time favorite books is The Five People You Meet in Heaven. Which I just love that book. I could read it. I have read it several times. And then there's another one of my favorites called The Timekeeper that I would say that this is very similar to. So if you've read The Timekeeper, I think you really will like this book as well, because the narrative is very different.
Didn't he write Tuesdays with Morrie as well?
He did.
Yeah, so that was
breakout.
the first book. I did read that, and that was years ago because I knew Mitch from a TV sports show that was on ESPN
right.
called The Sports Writers, and it
Yeah.
used to come on Sunday mornings when I was getting ready for church. I always had it in the background because I'm a Kentucky basketball fan and Tennessee Titan fan, and so I knew him from that. And then
Yeah.
they actually made that movie Tuesdays with Morrie into, I think, a television movie, and it had Jack Lemmon in it, and it was
Yeah.
just such a beautiful story.
Yeah. Yeah, that's his only, well, I don't know. I think he has one other nonfiction book. But that was his first book. That was his breakout book, and that was actually about his relationship with one of his former teachers.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, that was a good one. So what about you?
Okay, so the next one I did, because I was fortunate to read this book. All three of these books I read early on in their development. And the first one I'm going to talk about is Of Lies and Honey, and that is written by you, Donna. You were so incredible to ask me, and this was kind of early in our friendship relationship. You
Yeah.
asked me to be a beta reader, and at that point, I had never been a beta reader. And I think I read it in a day because I filled out that your questionnaire immediately. And I think at first you were like, "There's no way she read this quickly," and I did. And I told you then, and I loved All That Is Sacred. You know how I feel about your debut novel. But I absolutely fell in love with this book. I loved all the characters. I loved the premise, and it's award winning. And also, I want to say big congratulations because you were named a finalist again in a very prestigious book award. You've won lots of awards for this one. I loved the whole concept. I loved how it went into dual timelines. I had told you how I felt I loved because it was set in the South and in Georgia, which I was very familiar with. And I actually gave you a couple of tips on that.
Yes, you did.
And I fell in love with this story, and kudos to you. Bravo. I absolutely loved it. So congratulations, and tell everyone about this big award that you were a finalist in.
Sure. So the Chanticleer Awards have several different divisions. And so I submitted my book to the Somerset division, which is for literary and contemporary fiction. And so, yeah, it was named a finalist just this past month. And I'll find out in April whether I make it to the winner round or not. So I'm super excited.
Well, congratulations.
Thank you.
So the other two books, one is Soul Dancing by Gail Priest, and the other one is The Empress of Cooke County by Elizabeth Bass Parman. So Gail Priest is, she writes for our publisher, Red Adept, and she asked me to blurb this. This is one of the first blurbs that I was asked to do. And it was the most unique concept of a book story. I mean, I still think it's one of the most unique beginnings of a book. And It's about love. It starts out with this woman who she's dying in the hospital, and she's elderly, and then she's there with her husband, and then all of a sudden she gets pushed into a different plane of reality, and she's giving birth to a child. And I don't want to give away any more than that, but I highly recommend this book, and it's winning awards left and right.
Yeah.
And I am so proud of what Gail has done. And again, one of the more unique plots that I have ever read. And then, as I was saying, the Empress of Cooke County, this is Elizabeth Bass Parman. She is a friend of mine. I met her years ago when I joined the WFWA, and she realized I was from Brentwood, and we went and met for coffee, and we exchanged our books that day before either one of us had a publishing deal. And this is set in the 1960s. Think Jackie Kennedy. She has possums inside of this big mansion. You have this woman who is a terrible, horrific woman who is trying to be the empress of this little small town, all the while trying to marry off her 18-year-old daughter. If you love historical fiction, especially set in the 60s with the little Beatles mixed in there, I highly suggest you check that one out.
Very cool. Yeah, I'm looking forward to reading Elizabeth's book. I haven't read it yet. I have read Gail's book, which I totally agree with you. What an amazing upside down premise. You really almost have to kind of reframe your thinking in order to wrap your mind around the story. And it's wonderful. Had my attention from beginning to end. Loved the characters. I think she did a great job.
Yeah. Well, we're going to start wrapping this up, but we don't want to end our 2024 best without looking towards 2025. So, what are some of the books, Donna, that you are looking forward to this year?
So I have a handful. My first one that is at the top of my list, and I haven't ordered it yet because I do not like reading hardcover books. So I wait for the paperback to come out. But Here One Moment by Liane Moriarty. It is an interesting premise. It's about people on a flight to Sydney, and they all find out how they're going to die. And so I just think it's really interesting. It's labeled as a psychological thriller and domestic fiction.
Okay.
There's a new book by a debut author. Her name is Florence Knapp, called The Names, which is coming out. And it tells a story of alternate lives. It sounds like different sort of timelines. And it all starts at the moment that this woman, Cora, gives birth to her son, and they ask what she's going to name her son. And so the stories go off in different directions based on different name choices, which I thought was a really cool premise. So I'm looking forward to that. And I'm looking forward to Elizabeth Strout's Tell Me Everything. It's in her Lucy Barton series. And it takes place in Maine and talks about how we keep our relationships afloat. I love any book that has relationships in it. And then my last one is From Here to the Great Unknown by Lisa Marie Presley and Riley Keough. I grew up in a household where my mother idolized Elvis Presley. In fact, the day that he died, I remember like it was yesterday, and I think I was about 7 years old. It was as if one of our family members had died. And so I grew up listening to Elvis. I loved Lisa Marie Presley. I thought she was adorable. I loved Riley Keough in Daisy and the Six. And so Lisa wanted to write her memoir before she died and put together a whole bunch of tapes and talked to Riley and asked her to help her write it. And so after Lisa passed away, Riley decided to put all the tapes together and write the story. So this is one I'm going to listen to on audio because it is told in Lisa Marie Presley's voice and also Riley Keough's. So I'm super excited about that.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. What about you?
So for me, I am not a planner on books. If I see something on maybe Amazon or on Instagram, or, someone suggest it, or if my daughter suggests it, I'm game for it. So I really don't have a plan. The one thing that I'm really excited about is called Beach House Rules by Kristy Woodson Harvey. She is a go-to author of mine. I think I have read every single book that she has put out. I just finished a book earlier this year or last year called A Happier Life. And
Mhm.
I'm actually looking forward to it because I know that I'm going to get a great Southern book with full of
Mhm.
charm. And she's one of my go-tos. And I guess the other books are some of the ones that you talked about that I do have on my list. But
Mhm.
again, I think I'm just going to wait for my daughter's lead, and she and I can have our own little book discussions.
That's awesome.
So real quick, so Donna, as our teacher, even though you've
Yeah.
been out for a lot of the month of January, do we have a do now today?
Well, we do have a little do now. My suggestion is to get yourself on an app like Goodreads, Storygraph, Fable. There are many different apps out there to track your reading and also get reviews from other readers.
Yeah.
So I would check out one of those. I would also check out, if you're on Facebook, there are book groups galore on Facebook. Maybe join a book group. Hope and I both are part of the Bookish Road Trip, which I know we've mentioned before, and we would love to have you sign on to the Bookish Road Trip. But if that's not your gig, there are many other bookish groups out there for you to join.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
our next episode is coming up. These episodes are going to kind of hit back to back because of our illnesses. And
Yeah.
our next episode, I'm really excited about because we're going to be talking about book reviews and the perspective of a reader, how to
Mhm.
write a book review, and some of the benefits of writing book reviews. And we're also going to talk about author blogs, or I'm sorry, blurbs,
Words.
because blurbs got a lot of attention this past week with
Mhm.
a big deal with one of the big five decided that with their imprint, they're not going to require authors to get blurbs anymore. And we're going to talk about what is an author blurb and how important they are, or are they?
Yeah.
So, but anyway, well, Donna, I'm so excited about our new year. I can't believe this is our third season.
I know. I know. It's going by fast.
It is. Well, and thank you for everyone for joining us. And until next time.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us today. I'm Hope Gibbs.
And I'm Donna Norman Carbone. It's time for you to get to work.
We look forward to seeing you in 2 weeks with another tip from your author friends.